Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. Pretty sure it's Tuesday. These days all kind of run together, you know. But thank you for coming back for another science experiment of the day. Morning, is that Jack that's on there? And Emily? Maybe? Maybe. Hello, today I'm going to do an experiment, but I'm also going to share a little bit of Missouri history. So it's a history and science lesson. Oh, hey, Tammy, thanks. Yes, it is Tuesday, okay. I don't know, after a while they all run together. So it's day 3,456 of staying at home and not going to school, it feels like, but just kidding. It's only been a few weeks, 5, 6, somewhere there. But these science experiments really help me out, give me something to do during the day, and give me a sense of purpose. So, oh, hi, Jack and Emily. If my friend Natalie is watching, this is an experiment I do in my natural disasters class. So, in natural disasters, we talk about tornadoes and hurricanes and, all kinds of severe weather. And then we also, blizzards and all that. And then we also talk about earthquakes and volcanoes. But something really cool that Missouri's famous for, you guys all know that Missouri's called the Show Me State because we want to be shown things. We don't just take people's word for it. But Missouri's also known as the Cave State. So in Missouri, we have a lot of water. We have a lot of rivers and lakes and things like that. So in Missouri, we're known as the Cave State because those rivers have actually carved out channels underneath the surface of the earth. So I'm going to show you a little bit about that today. So first of all, to show off my pretty drawing here. So here we go. Here's Missouri. Kind of looks like that. You guys all know I'm a science teacher for a reason. I'm not an art teacher. But Missouri is known as the Cave State. So the caves that we have here, they've been used for all kinds of things. They're used for storage because they're nice and cool and they're a consistent temperature. For those of you that are adults, we have some wineries that are in caves as of late. And because it's great to go down there, they're climate controlled and you don't have to pump in any heating or cooling. But Missouri is also the home of Jesse James. So we have Merrimack Caverns. And if you don't know Jesse James was a bank robber. And I believe he robbed stagecoaches also. Marcia, Sinkhole. Yes, Sinkhole. So Jesse James was a thief, and his family was actually from Kentucky. They moved to Missouri, and he was one of many children in the family. But when he grew up, he became a robber, and he used to go steal from banks. And in the St. Louis area, there's a cave called Merrimack Caverns, and that's where he hid all of his loot. So the year that he was doing all these bank robberies and things, the water level in the cave was really low because we were in a drought. And so he was able to go into the very back part of the cave and he was able to hide his loot. And, after a while, the water level came back up. So once people found out that he had stolen all of this and then he hid it in the cave, they started to go look for it, but they realized that the water level was too high. So they had to wait for the water level. They had to wait for another year when there was a drought to go back into the part where they thought he hid all the loot. So Missouri is known for a lot of its caves. We have a lot of caves in this area here. I'm just south of St. Louis, for those of you that are out of state. I know some of my friends from out of state are watching. So just a little bit south of St. Louis. But we have a lot of caves here. And one of the cool things in St. Louis, like I said, is they used to store things in those caves. So underneath the streets of St. Louis, there are actually caves. They're still there. Now they use them for haunted houses and things. There's all kinds of crazy things you can do in a cave. Here in Festus, though, we used to have, before my time, probably my parents' time, but there was a cave right here in Festus that they used to use as a roller skating rink, and also they used to have like parties and dances and things in the cave. So really cool stuff that happens around here. So I'm going to show you how to make a sinkhole in a cup. So I usually use styrofoam cups for this, but I didn't have any here, so I used plastic. My husband was nice enough to cut the holes out so I didn't cut myself. So I have a hole in the bottom of this cup. Now the cool thing about clear cups is you can see what's going on the inside. So I also have one of these sponges, one of those fancy green and yellow ones. You don't have to use that, just a sponge. I actually cut just a chunk of it that will cover the hole in the bottom, but I cut off the green part because it kind of inhibits the water flow. So I took the green part off. So I'm going to put this little piece of sponge in the bottom of my cup, and it's going to cover up the hole. All right, so far so good. I'm going to put this where I think you can see it. I'll move it in a second. I know it's not in the right spot. The next thing I did, usually I take a Post-it. My Post-its are out of school. So I just took a piece of paper and I wound it up into a little tube, a little cylinder, and I just put a piece of tape on it. Now this is not going to stay in the cup, so you don't have to worry about it getting wet. All right, so now I think, there we go. So what I'm going to do, I also have some sugar. I'm going to take this tube and I'm going to hold it right on top of the sponge. Actually, I need to flip it over because the bottom part's a little flatter, I think. Oh, cooperate. There we go. I'm going to put this tube right on top of there. I'm going to fill up the tube with sugar because, oh, I need my funnel. Fancy dancy funnel. So inside these sinkholes that I'm going to show you, and I have some drawings for that too, but here in Missouri we have a lot of sedimentary rock. And if you saw my rock cycle video with the starburst, you know that's one of the parts of the rock cycle where the rock actually stays in very flat layers. So we have a lot of sedimentary rock around here. So when you drive down the road, like the highways where they've cut out the rock, you can actually see the sedimentary rock on the side of the road in nice flat layers. Okay, so I have this tube of sugar on top of the sponge there. Then I have some sand. So I'm going to fill the rest of the cup with sand all the way around. So I'm still holding that tube in there with my finger. Usually this is a two-person job, especially for my students. I usually have two people doing this. One person holding, one person pouring. So I'm pouring the sand in around that tube of sugar. So the sedimentary rock we have around here, a lot of it is very soft and very water soluble, which is limestone, dolomite, and some gypsum. You might know gypsum, like gypsum board, which is like the drywall. That's the same thing. So drywall is actually made from a mineral called gypsum, and it's water soluble, so don't get drywall wet. All right, so now that I have the level of sand to the top of my tube, I'm going to take that little tube out. So I'm just going to pull it straight up. So the sugar's still inside there. And then I'm just going to put a little bit on top because when we have sinkholes, and sinkholes do happen in our area quite often, when we have sinkholes, the top, you can't tell just by walking down the street where a sinkhole is. You won't know until it actually happens, which is kind of scary, but for the most part, they don't happen that often. So the next thing, I just have a bowl. There we go. And I found it works better if I put the cup on top of something. So I have another piece of sponge here. I'm just going to cut it down so it's a little flatter. I didn't realize how uneven I cut that one. Put a little piece of sponge just so that it's sitting up off the top or the bottom of the bowl there. So there's my bowl, piece of sponge. And I'm just going to put the cup on top of that. And it's okay if it's wobbly right now because this water that I'm putting around it is going to help keep it in place. So what happens with sinkholes is usually we have a really wet time and the water table's high. So the water table is just the level of water that's underneath the surface of the earth at any given time. So for those of you in my area right now, we kind of have a little bit of flooding going on. So our water table is actually higher than it usually is. I'm just going to pour this water in there, and then I'll show you a little better picture. There we go. So here is my cup, and remember the sugar's down in the bottom, in the middle of the cup there. It actually goes almost all the way to the top. And then you can see you saw from the side, but the sponge is in the bottom. There's a sponge underneath the cup just to keep it up enough that the water can go up. So this would be like the normal water table. And then what happens is the water, so let me show you my picture there. So the before, here's the water-soluble rock inside the non-water-soluble rock, and there's some grass on top. So inside there's just this pocket of rock that's limestone, dolomite, maybe some gypsum. And then during the process, when the sinkhole forms, if you can see down here, that rock has been washed away, and it just leaves an empty cave right here. And then because of all that pressure, here's my after part. There you go. After a while, the top part of that rock that was up here, it gets to the point where it can't support itself anymore and it falls in. And when it falls in, it leaves that depression like that, and that's the sinkhole. So a lot of it happens when we have droughts, but it can happen at any time. So like right here, I can show you, I did this one last night. Here is my sinkhole. There you go. So what happened in the cup is the sugar, just like that water-soluble rock, the sugar dissolves into the water, and then the top part of the sand can't keep itself up anymore, so it drops down and it creates the depression, which is the sinkhole. So that is your sinkhole in a cup, and a little bit of Missouri history there. I know sinkholes can happen anywhere. If you check Florida, if you look up videos, if you're interested in it, look up videos about Florida sinkholes. Florida has massive sinkholes. I mean, huge, like swallowed multiple houses. So Florida is one place that has a lot of sinkholes. Missouri has them, but we don't have them quite as bad as Florida does. But it's very interesting. I wouldn't watch too many of those videos because then you'll be a little nervous about walking around outside. But it is definitely something to look into. So a little bit of Missouri, the cave state history, and some sinkholes in a cup. So hope you enjoyed. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.